All righty, you're good to go.
Good morning, everyone. Please join me in welcoming our speakers today, Brad Ferrier and Sara Pinkham. Brad Ferrier is the Digital Projects Librarian in Special Collections and Archives and a co-curator for the Hey Buddy, I'm Bill exhibit. He is also a member of the library's Ideas Council and is part of the campus-wide Council on Disability Awareness. Sara Pinkham is the Exhibition and Engagement Coordinator for the main library gallery and oversees the production of all exhibits and programs in that space. She chairs the gallery advisory team and is a member of the Campus Galleries, Libraries, Archives, and Museums panel. Please join me in welcoming our speakers.
Thank you, Carlette. Good morning, everybody. We'll just get right into it. Thank you for being here today. This is Bill. You have not met Bill before. So I'm going to hand this off to Brad to start off with.
Okay. So I was contacted in or around June of 2021 by Jen Knights, who is my the other co-curator of this exhibit. She was asking if I would like to be a part of curating the exhibit about Bill Sackter. Neither of us had ever curated an exhibit. This would be an interesting learning and rewarding experience for both of us. I said yes without hesitation. Although Jen knew of the story of Bill quite well, she worked at the School of Social Work and managed Wild Bill's coffee shop at the time. I had only become aware of Bill really in the last year, when Jen has shown the documentary A Friend Indeed, the story of Bill Sackter in the coffee shop. The reasons that Jen proposed this exhibit was to tell Bill's story again. Wild Bills and Uptown Bills, started by Tom Waltz, the former director of the School of Social Work, would both be closing soon. COVID and the fact that coffee was everywhere now, leaving the employees at Wild Bills with very little interaction with customers. There were fewer and fewer people who recognized the name Bill Sackter or knew of his story. The year 2023 was significant because it marked the anniversaries of his birth, 110 years, and his death, 40 years. It was also important because she saw the need to save some of the materials related to him, such as personal items, documents, scrapbooks, and photos. And she wanted to connect with Barry and Bev Morrow before it was too late. For me, major themes started to emerge. The first was the importance of storytelling. Bill's story as told by Barry Morrow, the reason that we know of Bill at all. Second, the importance of friends. And third, community, specifically Iowa City. So much of the backdrop for the story of Bill's later life is Iowa City. In addition to these things, I also found, while researching the exhibit, a connection to Bill. As many of you know, I had a stroke in 2013 here in Iowa City, just after graduating from SLIS. I decided to move back to my hometown in Indiana to be with my family as I recovered. In 2016, I came back to Iowa City and started volunteering here at the library and at the Stanley. The importance of friends is one thing that we can all relate to. Moving back home and then moving back again to Iowa City would have been nearly impossible without people who helped me, many of them twice. Volunteering, making me feel like I had something to add. And ultimately getting the job that I have now would not have been possible without friends, some that I had before my stroke and some that I had not met yet. Some of the items that I found and stories that they told were familiar to me, despite our stories and disabilities being very different. I will get into some of the items that I found meaningful a little later. You can, next slide.
Okay, thank you, Brad. And this we'll be talking about Bill here in a couple of minutes, give you a little bit more background about the man himself. But we wanted to, since you are all library staff, just kind of give you a glimpse into the behind the scenes parts about this exhibit. So I wanted to talk just briefly about how this exhibit was selected and how we select exhibits for exhibit production for the main library gallery. So like all of our main library gallery exhibits, Hey Buddy, I'm Bill was selected by the gallery advisory team after a call for proposals. And for anyone who does not know, this team is made up of several members from across the libraries and some representatives from the Penncrest Museums and the Stanley Museum of Art. So our library departments represented are IT, undergraduate engagement, cataloging, communications, special collections, conservation, the art library as a branch library, and user services, plus Paul Soderdahl. And just about every other year-ish, we send out a call for exhibit proposals. And this includes kind of a broad first round, which asks for more of a general summary and what kinds of objects that could end up in the exhibit, just to kind of get an idea of whether that will be visually interesting. And the second round is for full proposals, and it's by invitation only after the gallery advisory team assesses those first round statements of interest. Those who are able to submit for the gallery are University of Iowa staff and faculty. We don't really accept outside proposals from curators that are outside of our staff, just because a major goal of the gallery is to show our own materials. And so we don't usually show traveling exhibits that come with all their own materials. So when Jen submitted her idea for this exhibit, kind of were working on this late 2020, early 2021, the proposal was among several good ones. We had a really great slate of ideas that year, and the proposals were very competitive for 22 and 23. And the team picked this proposal for production because they liked the tie-in with local history and university history, and it prioritized a marginalized voice, in this case, Bill, a person with an intellectual disability, and it also looked like an opportunity to expand holdings related to Bill's life. So there seemed like a good opportunity for local partnerships too, which Brad will explain a little bit later. So you can see here in this photo, we have an Emmy, one of many that are in special collections and archives, but this one is Barry Morrow's Emmy for the CBS 1981 film Bill, which we'll eventually talk to you about, but it's kind of a star item in the exhibit. So Brad will let you know a little bit more about Bill himself.
Who was Bill? Bill Sackter was born in 1913 to Jewish Ukrainian immigrants, Sam and Mary Sackter, in St. Paul, Minnesota. When Bill was 7, his father died from complications of the Spanish flu. They were very poor, and his mother spoke very little English, and she was left with their small grocery store, 3 young children to take care of. Bill was having difficulty in school, and after taking an intelligence test, he was classified as subnormal. The state of Minnesota determined that he would be a burden on society, so he was placed in the Faribault State School for the Feeble-Minded and Epileptic, against the wishes of his mother. Sackter remained there for 44 years, never seeing his family again. Then in 1964, deinstitutionalization was happening across the country. Bill was released from Faribault. He worked as a pot scrubber at the Minnetonka Club, where he met and became close friends with Bev, who was a waitress there, and her husband, Barry Morrow. When Barry took a job at the University of Iowa as media specialist for the School of Social Work in the early 1970s, he became Bill's guardian and brought him to Iowa City. That was the beginning of what Jen often refers to as when his real life began. Bill wrote the Bill's Try-Up, and it was published in the Des Moines Register. This would lead to Bill being named Handicapped Iowan of the Year in 1976, and would later become the basis of the made-for-TV movie Bill in 1981, starring Mickey Rooney and Dennis Quaid. You can go to the next slide. So we decided that it would be best to tell Bill's story in chronological order, starting off with his parents in Minneapolis through his 44 years in the institution, to getting out and meeting Barry and Bev Morrow, to his move to Iowa City, and a life as a celebrity after the movie Bill came out on CBS. We knew the first part of the exhibit would be sparse, since so much of his life in the institution was missing. We also knew right away that we needed to leave space to talk about some of the many friends he made later in life, like Tom Waltz, Mae Driscoll, Jack Depke, and Rabbi Jeff Portman. Next slide. We received scrapbooks and materials from the School of Social Work. There were photos, thank you cards, art from children who visited across the country, personal belongings, awards, etc. There were 8 boxes in scrapbooks, some that were quite large. It was a lot to go through. This was the first of several hauls that would be coming to us that would be acquired by Sarah Keene and the archives. Next slide. Now that the research about Bill was underway, and the fact that Sarah, Jen, Sarah Keene, and Pete Ballesteri were working on getting more material from Barry and the School of Social Work, I thought I would investigate how Iowa handled disabilities historically. Were there institutions like Faribault? Who was involved in advocacy work in Iowa City or in Iowa? To do this, I went to the State Historical Society of Iowa, where I found literature about treating, caring for, and housing the insane, including materials about Iowa institutes and schools. At the Johnson County Historical Society, you can go to the next slide. At the Johnson County Historical Society, I found information about the Johnson County Poor Farm and articles about Mae Driscoll and the home where Bill lived, and the picture of the home where the Johnson County Arc began. I also found, I also found quite a lot of information about the Johnson County Poor Farm. It was mostly reports by the county and the newspaper articles. I'd previously learned of the Poor Farm and Asylum having sat on the Disability Advisory Committee and visited the site several years ago. That led me to visit Kim Painter, the Johnson County recorder. She had stories about life on the farm from people who are still living, but chose not to be identified. And some ledger books dating from the early 1900s of the farm and asylum that mentioned what types of goods were produced, sold, used, and some records of people that were brought there to live and brief medical histories. She checked with lawyers from the county, and we decided that too much of the records would be to be redacted, that it would really not be appropriate for display in the gallery. The next slide. I visited Drake University Special Collections and Archives, where the Tom Harkin papers are located, right across the street from the Harkin Institute in Des Moines. Senator Harkin is probably the one that comes to mind for many when thinking about advocacy and disability rights in Iowa. He was tapped by Senator Kennedy to craft legislation to protect the rights of millions of Americans with physical and mental disabilities. He knew firsthand about these challenges from his brother Frank, who was deaf from the early age and attended the Iowa School for the Deaf. What emerged from that process would later become his signature legislative achievement, the Americans with Disabilities Act. There I met with Hope Bybens, University, the director of the University of Special Collections. She showed me his papers organized by legislative working files and speeches and several boxes of awards and list of audio and video recordings. One of the things that I found was the George Bush Medal for Empowerment of People with Disabilities, awarded to Senator Harkin in 1994. It ended up not being loaned to us because of a scheduling conflict on their end. I also visited the IWA to find information about Elizabeth Reese after reading a story in the Press Citizen titled "Mrs. Reese Lived Her Book." She was an educator and advocate for her daughter Sara, who was born with Down syndrome. She continued her advocacy by becoming the president of ARC of Johnson County and traveled to Osaka, Japan to speak about disability resources and programs. Sara, you can take it from here.
So as Brad has mentioned, we were able to do some collection development because of this exhibit. And one of the great things about this exhibit behind the scenes is that we were able to continue building our relationship with Barry and Bev Morrow, who were such good friends of Bill and who were his guardians for such a long time. And so they entrusted us with a couple of shipments of Bill's belongings and memorabilia. And many of those items ended up in the exhibit. And this process was overseen by Pete in Special Collections, who's our curator of popular culture. So you can see here in the photo to the left, there's Pete, Jen, and Brad unpacking a box from the Morrows. And then up on the right-hand side on the top, you see Barry and Bev when they come to visit the exhibit. And then the bottom right, there are several things that came in boxes from Barry and Bev. And on the social work end of things, Sarah Keane, university archivist, oversaw the intake and processing of a collection of Bill-related materials from School of Social Work. And a lot of those arrived in scrapbook form, and there was quite a lot of material, quite a lot to go through there. But overall, this has helped us build up our Bill Sackter papers collection, which previously had very little in it. I think we had about one box, and it was some of Bill's clothing. And this is one of the visions that co-curator Jen had from the start, is to build up our collections related to Bill. And we also received a fairly large digital archive of photos taken by Bill's friends, Barry Morrow, Tom Walls, and Jack Depke. And this came from Lane Wyrick, who directed and produced a 2008 documentary about Bill called A Friend Indeed, which if you go to the gallery website, you can find a link to that, to the YouTube page where you can watch the whole documentary for free. Definitely recommend. And we haven't really decided what's next yet for these since they were provided specifically to reprint on exhibit panels, but it's a great digitized collection and it's nice that we have access to that. So as far as design for this exhibit goes, seen here, there's kind of a photo from the exhibit on the left, and then on the right, we have Kalmia Strong putting some vinyl on the front window of the gallery. Each exhibit has a unique design that's inspired by its subject matter and by ideas that the curators might have. So Kalmia, who is our library's creative coordinator, for those who have not met her, designs each exhibit. And that includes color schemes, textures and patterns, fonts, vinyl, and just so many more elements. And for this exhibit, Kalmia really wanted to provide a visual cue that there were two storylines. So you kind of heard from Brad that there's the Bill storyline, and then there's also this history of Iowa's history with disability. So you can see that some of the panels are blue and some of them are orange in that photo on the slide. And generally speaking, the blue panels are Bill's continuous narrative, and the orange help tell that Iowa story about our disability-related history and state. She also used patterns common to Bill to provide some texture on the panels, which was fun. So the blue panels had a light denim look because Bill was always in his overalls for the most part. And the orange panel pattern was inspired by the flannel shirts often wore, usually under his overalls. So definitely a flannel and denim guy. And for design in the gallery, we always follow universal design standards when we're installing the exhibit. So for example, we make sure to consider the font size and the word placement on panels. We consider folks who might be colorblind. We make sure that there's room for wheelchairs to move freely in the exhibit, make sure that there's seating, and make sure that the panels are placed so they can be read by people, whether they're sitting or standing at any height. So it's always important to us. On a related note, we also offer a descriptive tour option for people who are blind or low vision. So I don't know if that's something that everyone knows, but if we do get contacted for that, I am always ready to give a descriptive tour for those folks. And for the design for this exhibit, Brad and Jen really wanted to incorporate kind of a small Wild Bill's environment into the exhibit, which you'll see some photos of a little bit later. So we borrowed some items from School of Social Work and then filled in the rest with fun thrift store and Etsy finds. And we also had some colleagues contribute decor. So Lisa Gardenier has a fabulous collection of milk glass cups, which we borrowed many of. Very excellent. So we do have kind of a Wild Bill's-esque vibe in part of the exhibit. With any exhibit, there's always the all-important trip through conservation for these items. And I would say that some of the most critical work in creating an exhibit, aside from the curation and creating the narrative, is very much invisible. So for example, Bill Voss is our exhibit preparator, and he works on conservation treatments for items that need it before going on display. And he creates a custom mount for every single object. And sometimes he has to get very creative to make sure the mount will hold the item securely. For each exhibit, he often makes between 50 and 100 mounts, which is wild. And he is basically a wizard, in my opinion. And then we've got Giselle, of course, part of the exhibit team, who's our university conservator, and she's definitely a key team member on all exhibits. And Giselle assesses all the items before display to make sure that they don't need any treatment, and if they do, to make recommendations about treatment and about display conditions. She does some treatment work as well as Bill, and then she handles framing of all of our artworks for display and then helps with loans from other museums and libraries as applies. So you can see here in some photos on the far right bottom, there's a lovely photo of a wig down here. So I'm going to tell you a few kind of little quirky things about conservation for this exhibit, adventures that our conservation team went on. So the wig is on display in the exhibit, but it's seen here in the fume hood in the conservation lab. This is a wig that had been worn many, many times and probably had never been washed. And you could kind of imagine how that might how that might be to encounter. So that's what's known affectionately by Barry and Bev as Bill's rat's nest wig. So we were able to comb that out and get it aired out, and it's a great piece that's on display in the gallery. And then we had some clothing items that included an engineer's cap that really needed some gentle but intensive cleaning, and a fragile straw hat that needed careful reshaping. So those are some things that Giselle worked on. And it's a little different than the normal paper objects that she works on, but she did a great job, of course, preparing those items for display. And then our Bill and Giselle did some light conservation work on a light up sign at the top of the beauty bar that we borrowed from the School of Social Work, and that had not been in operation for a long time. So in some of the photos here, you can see in the upper right-hand corner, there's adamantine spine moving this famed beauty bar out of Wild Bill's in North Hall. We'll show you some pictures of that a little bit later. There was like an inch of clearance above that. So we were amazed we were able to get it out and bring it over to the library. So at the top of the beauty bar, there's literally just this cutout that says beauty bar, and we didn't realize that it lit up at first, but it does. So Bill and Giselle were able to get that working again to put on kind of every once in a while for special things during the exhibit. So I think that the School of Social Work will be excited when they get this back, that they have this option of lighting up the top of the beauty bar. And that's a piece that was used in Wild Bill's kind of after Bill's time, but it was used to serve coffee and to take orders. So it's very much a classic Wild Bill's piece. Let's see, I mentioned before that we had some items donated to us by the School of Social Work, which Sarah Keene had been working with, but we also borrowed some things that they definitely do want back, like that beauty bar. There's a hat and a harmonica, some ephemera, and then a large photo of Bill with Mickey Rooney, which you could kind of see in one of the photos here, which is fantastic. And you can't really see it, but 3/4 of Helen Hunt's face is in there. So that must have been from the second Bill movie. And as Brad has mentioned, we also borrowed some items from the State Historical Society of Iowa. So we coordinated permissions for using some digital material from other libraries and from them. And then we also went on a mannequin journey with the National Czech and Slovak Museum and Library, my previous colleagues. So you can see, here's a picture of me that my husband took of me like weirdly walking into the library with a stack of mannequin parts. This is just a normal day in the gallery. So as far as exhibit installation goes, I would say that exhibit installation for each exhibit, whether it's Bill or any other exhibit, usually takes a couple of weeks and usually working pretty intensively for a couple of weeks. So there's painting and wall repair to think about, cleaning, panel installation, item and label installation, and so much more. And in this case, I was pretty proud of our fun front window display. After all the work I did to source and set up the items, you can see my absolutely fabulous donuts in this photo at the far top right. I will tell you about the mannequins. I borrowed multiple mannequins and mannequin heads from the Czech and Slovak Museum, and because Bill is a larger than life character, we had this vision that he must have been very tall and broad. Not sure why I didn't measure his outfits, but I borrowed a standard mannequin from the museum in Cedar Rapids and brought it to Iowa City, which was fun to see the looks of people as I was driving on 380 down to Iowa City with this like large creepy mannequin in my little Honda Fit. But it was too tall when we put the overalls on. You can see how tall this guy is. And so the mannequin was essentially wearing high waters. So there's Giselle in the center with mannequin we did not use, and then the mannequin on the left that we did in fact use, which is more appropriately sized and adjustable. So that was important. Really turns out that Bill was more like 5'6". So that was a miscalculation we made, and we had a good chuckle over it. But here's some, I had to throw this in there in the far left corner. There's all of the mannequins I had to choose from the Czech and Slovak Museum. Like, this is definitely, my friends there were very helpful in helping us select some mannequins. So that is Trisha Bender, collections manager for the Czech and Slovak Museum, pointing at her array of mannequins. So we're going to get into some of our favorite items now, and Brad will tell you first about some of his.
Yeah, some of my favorite items included a notebook and notes to the Iowa City bus drivers. I have seen pictures of Bill with students from the School of Social Work. They were sitting down at one of the tables in the coffee shop. I don't know exactly how, I don't exactly know, but the notebook could have been used in this setting. He was practicing writing his letters. He never learned to read or write. He was made to work in Faribault instead of going to school. He could write his name, BLL, with a dot over the middle L. You can see that's one of the things that Kalmia included on the doors to the exhibit. I still have, following my stroke, notebooks that I would practice writing. There were lots of misspelled words, and my handwriting was bad. I was learning to read and write again with my non-dominant hand. I remember when I came back to Iowa City and would have to take the bus to get to the library or get to the museum. I could really have used cards like he had for the bus drivers or cards like that. Not because I was confused or distracted, but because of my aphasia. I found out since that there are cards used for exactly this, which explain to people about a disability like aphasia, for when someone is in a circumstance when they find it difficult to communicate. Next slide. A couple other things that I would like to point out. There was this picture that I found of Laurel and Hardy in scrapbook. Laurel and Hardy must have been a big source of fun and entertainment for him and for Barry. I think I saw a photo or video of them watching some Laurel and Hardy movie. But he had written, I found this card that was in the scrapbooks, and he had written his name all over it. You can kind of see from the picture. Later, when I was looking through the exhibit in the beauty bar, I saw a similar Laurel and Hardy photo framed beside him in the coffee shop. Seeing the picture in the gallery just made me smile. The story about the relationship that he had with Missy Hines is something that I think should be pointed out. Missy was a little girl born with Down syndrome. You can read about how the two of them were almost inseparable after they met at an ARC event in Arizona. In fact, the Hines family was making preparations for Bill to move there sometime after Barry had moved to California. They had sent Bill a package right before he passed away. It did not arrive in time for it to be opened. At his funeral, the Hines family brought an Arizona state flag, which was draped over the coffin at one point. That's my favorite items, Sarah.
So some of my favorite things include just these comparisons. So in the exhibit, we've got a couple of Bill's hats. And what I love about this in the exhibit is that we not only have a straw hat owned by Bill, but we've got a photo of him wearing the hat, which I think is great. And then we've got that large photo of Bill posing with Mickey Rooney. And we also have the hat that he's wearing in that photo, which I think is wonderful. And I'll just point out some of Bill's mount work here. It's kind of difficult to see, but you can see there are some clear stands under each of the hats. And there's a perfectly formed ethafoam, I guess, stand inside for each of those hats as well. So I just love the fact that we've got photos, but we also have the object that's in the photos. And that hat that says Bill on it will go back to the School of Social Work because they have a permanent display in the hallway of some of their Bill things. And then I just had the best time making the front window display, so I just wanted to show a little bit of that. I just had a lot of fun researching what to put in there, looking at all of these great photos that we got from Lane and through Barry. And I never knew about the apparent fake food subculture that exists, but it does. So the donuts, like that was really down the rabbit hole on Etsy. I'll never forget this. And I like being able to put Bill's clothes on display too. And I would note, and I've said this to various tour groups who have come in, these are the clothes of Bill's that we have pretty much. And so his classic outfit was overalls and a flannel shirt and some black shoes. But as you see, he's not wearing a flannel shirt, he's wearing a Hawaiian shirt. Bill would probably not approve of this outfit because the Hawaiian shirt was for special occasions. So I just want to throw that out there. But I think he's looking good with his special occasion shirt and his overalls. And then just on a personal note, the little lunchbox that's toward the bottom near the mannequin's feet is a lunchbox that belonged to my grandpa, but it's very similar to one that Bill had. So I was glad to be able to include that in our front window display. So thanks to everyone who contributed to that. It was great fun to put together. And we were even able to print out some parquet flooring for the bottom of the case, which apparently there was parquet flooring at some point in Wild Bill's. So that was fun to discover. And one of the more boring looking things in the exhibit on the surface is this telegram, but I found it really touching. And this is from Barry and Bev's things that they sent us. And was addressed to Bill from CBS Entertainment as production was starting on the Bill movie. And I'll just read this really quick. It says, "Dear Bill, best of luck on the start of production of Bill, what we hope will be a truly special television drama. You have been an inspiration to the people you have met, and we trust that now the American television audience will get to know you and share your joy and humanity. Our best wishes for continued good health and prosperity. Love, Bud, Harvey, Bernie, Fred, Lori, and Steve, CBS Entertainment, CBS New York." I just thought that was very nice. And then finally, things that I like the best in the exhibit. I really like this section of the exhibit, but this is part of what we were trying to do with creating a small Wild Bill's atmosphere. So there are these wood panels in the back in our exhibit that you can see that we've filled with some photos of Bill in Iowa City and some of his awards and things like that. But on the right-hand side is a photo from the late 70s of Barry and Bill with their friend Rabbi Jeff Portman. And you can see in the background there's some wood paneling, but the blooper that we made when we put this together is our chevron pattern is upside down. So there's an Easter egg for you. But so that was really fun to be able to do. And I had a good friend, Bob Howe, put that together because he apparently has way more cottonwood than he could ever need in his wood shop. So we're grateful to Bob for putting that together for us. And that's what we have for now. But we're looking forward to answering any questions that you might have about this or anything else. And you all know our contact information, but you can see our emails and things there. And we're ready to take any questions you might have.
All right, thank you guys. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording. Oh my God, where'd my button go? Where is it? Ah, okay. Sorry.